Thank you. So we call this meeting to order on December 1st, 2021. I would like to acknowledge that this meeting is called to order at 8:30 p.m. online via Zoom on Wednesday, December 1st, 2021. We acknowledge that our offices are on the traditional territory of the neutral Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee people. As for regrets, I have received none. However, I'd like to note for the record that Director Bryant and Director Symington are not present. The President and CEO is also not present. As for the adoption of agenda, are there any requests to amend the agenda? Director Vale?
Yes, I'd like to defer the election and referendum policies approval item to, I guess we can either set a meeting next week, but I mean, the reality is this came into our inboxes at 1:45 this afternoon. And I think it's too important that for us to be, we're not in a position to approve it right now. I think it's irresponsible of us to be approving something we haven't had time to even thoroughly review.
Thank you for that, Director Vale. If I may refer to Chair Dang to respond.
Yeah, I will be against that, although I understand that the briefing note and the policies did come late. The changes in that were quite insignificant than to elections in the past, right? And I still think that's prudent to have a discussion on that. Unless the board is willing to change the elections dates as per that briefing note, then I would be in agreement to that. But to delay the release of the nomination packages by a full week does prove, I would, in my mind, quite detrimental to the service that we're trying to fight with the election there.
Thank you. I would just like to note for the record that Director Bryant has joined us. Director Bothwell?
Yeah, I just wanted to say I tend to agree with Chair Dang on this. I don't think we should push it to next week. I think it's pretty important that we make the decision this week. And I think having an emergency board meeting next week would be quite unproductive considering it is exam season.
I agree. Director Vale?
Yeah, I certainly sympathize and understand, the importance of this, but I mean, at the same time, it's unacceptable when we're getting these items at 1:45 in an afternoon for an 8:30 board meeting. That does not give many of us even time to really have a look at these. And I'm also concerned about the constitutional aspect. I mean, 24 hours in advance, we're not even achieving that. Like, the whole idea is we're not rubber stamping things here. We're supposed to be able to have a look at these materials in advance and come and make informed decisions. I'm not saying we can't do that, but I'm just concerned that this is a trend that I'm noticing, and it's frustrating.
Thank you, Director Vale. Director Bothwell, your hand is still up.
Oh, sorry, I meant to take that down.
All right, we can give the last word to Director Del Giudice before we make a decision.
All right, I agree with Chair Dang. I don't think that these these policies presented are much of a change of the status quo. I think it's prudent that we just get these approved today. And I understand Director Vale's concerns about the constitutionality, but I simply don't think that delaying this process will resolve that.
Thank you, Director Del Giudice. With that being said, shall we go to a vote on amending the agenda? Chair Dang, if you can help out here, please.
I guess we can have a vote to approve the agenda as presented.
Sure.
No, point of order. The motion that's on the
because it's an amendment of the agenda, but he didn't even say what the amendment was.
I did.
Oh, he did. So, but did you move it?
So the motion on the floor that didn't have a seconder yet was the to amend the agenda. So unless you have a seconder, then that motion will fail.
Do we have a seconder for Director Vale's motion? Director Shandok, would you like to speak to your motion? Any discussion on the matter? Going to a vote. Director Vale?
I approve.
Director Del Giudice?
I approve.
So this is to table the elections policy to next meeting, right?
Yes.
And to have a meeting next week.
Yes. That
I would say-
just to make sure
Yes.
everyone's aware of that.
Okay, so on that note, I do not approve. No.
You oppose?
Yes, I oppose.
Director Shandok?
I approve.
Director McCarthy,
I approve.
Director Phillips,
I oppose.
Director Bothwell,
I oppose.
Director May,
I oppose.
Director Bryant,
I oppose.
Chair Dang,
Should I abstain or should I oppose in this situation? I think since I was technically speaking.
You're sitting as a
part-
director, so you can vote.
Yes.
Then I oppose.
Oh, wait, the motion does not pass. 1, 2, 3 approvals and 5 oppositions. So therefore, the motion does not pass. As a result, do we have, can I get a motion to adopt the agenda as presented? Motion by Director Shandok, seconded by Director Del Giudice. Would you like to speak to your motions? Any discussion on the matter? As I see none, moving to a vote, Director Vale,
I will approve.
Director Del Giudice,
I approve.
Director Shandok,
I approve.
Director McCarthy. Director McCarthy,
I approve.
Director Phillips,
I approve.
Director Bothwell,
I approve.
Director May,
I approve.
Director Bryant,
I approve.
Chair Dang.
I approve.
The motion passes with unanimous consent. On to the
Oh,
conflicts.
sorry, just before we go on to that, I just want to note for the record that Director Symington has informed me that he unfortunately has strep throat and is bedridden right now and hurts to talk. So that does fill in for his regrets there.
So we have now received a regret from Director Symington. Thank you. I hope he feels better. That sounds rough. Okay, moving on to conflicts of interest. I, for one, will declare when we talk about the elections policy, given my intentions to run for president in January. If anybody else has any conflicts of interest, please speak now.
It's good to note that since we are discussing anything related to election, if you are planning to run for re-election or participating in any form, you should state a conflict of interest now.
Thank you, Director Del Giudice. Thank you for your honesty, Director Phillips.
Sorry, this is just to clarify. This is if we are planning to run for re-election.
Yes, or be involved in the election process this January.
Okay.
Director Bryant, thank you. This is a conflict of interest.
Yes.
Thank you.
Point of order, you have to ask what the conflict is, or like, for the record.
I believe I stated mine.
No, I mean, like, you can't, if you have a conflict, you have to say what that conflict is.
Right, I believe I've stated mine. If Director Del Giudice, Phillips, and Bryant would like to state theirs in that order, please. Director Del Giudice, your conflict would be,
I'm running in the next election.
sure,
Yep, running for re-election again in January.
thank you. Director Bryant,
I will also be running for re-election in January.
thank you. Moving on to the approval of the consent agenda. Can I get a motion on the table to approve the, or sorry?
Yeah, approve the consent agenda as.
Can I get
presented.
a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented? Motion by Director Vale, seconded by Director Bothwell. Would you like to speak to your motion? Any discussion on the matter? Thank you for your patience there. Moving to a vote, Director Vale,
I approve.
Director Del Giudice,
I approve.
Director Shandok,
I approve.
Director McCarthy,
I approve.
Director Phillips,
I approve.
Director Bothwell,
I approve.
Director May,
I approve.
Director Bryant,
I approve.
Chair Dang,
I abstain.
the motion passes 8-0 to 1. Moving on to comments from the chair of the board and CGO.
Okay, hello, everyone. So I'll keep my comments very brief since most of them are actually within the agenda package here, but I've met with the CRO as well as marketing and operations to begin the planning for the elections. So it is the hope that once the election policies are approved, that we can begin the campaigning, the nomination period effective tomorrow morning. After we have a meeting with Megan to just make sure that all the information gets put live there. I will leave it at that. I don't really have any other updates on top of my head.
Director Vale,
Yes, through you, Vice Chair, to normal Chair, Dang. Just as an action item that you committed last meeting, I believe it was, or the meeting before, to bring back to this meeting, was additional information related to live streaming. So I don't know if we have any further updates on that you.
Unfortunately not, since like trying to reach out to Josh, which was the person who is helping us. He's been unfortunately a bit busy with a number of committee meetings with the inclusion of the SLL grant for so I'm hoping that we can then utilize the winter break to figure out what a appropriate live streaming is, especially if we are moving the board meetings back in person, because then they're absolutely 100% necessary in that regard. So unfortunately, I do not have any other tangible updates other than that, Director Vale.
thank you, Chair Dang. Moving on to comments from the president and CEO that will be taken care of by the executive director and COO.
Full disclosure, that was an assumption on everybody's part. I don't actually have anything for the president's updates at this time, but I can skip right into mine if you want.
Please do. Sorry for the
Oh,
assumption.
sorry, before we do that, why don't we open up the questions if anyone has regarding the because we have two agenda items there, which is the board report as well as the quarterly reports that were requested by the board last meeting.
So sorry, what?
Oh, unless you can answer the questions for the board report.
Well, for the board report, I can answer most of the questions, sure. And if I can't, I can definitely get those answers answered relatively quickly. And then for the first quarter financials, Chris Turner is on this call and he's able to speak to those more accurately than I.
Director Vale.
Yeah, just a real quick item regarding the board report, and it's just really, and I'm not trying to be nitpicky here, but really just more in terms of the message it sends. But I note under 5, I believe it was, star changes were approved last board meeting. The board didn't approve any changes to the star format. I believe, if I recall, the president just shared the update, but just more, the board hasn't approved anything on that. So it's just making sure that that's sort of understood. That.
What page are you on, Brandon?
In the updated agenda 77, it would be top of 77. It's not the end of the world, but it's more just, it's basically saying that we're approved by the board when they weren't. Not that it's an issue, but.
Director Del Giudice, go ahead. Unless Phil has a response to that.
Yes. I have a question about the general hiring point. It also says that the way general hiring is conducted will be changed. Can you please elaborate on that? Specifically how it will be changed? Maybe I missed it last meeting. We talked about it.
So we didn't talk about that specifically last meeting. It was just kind of an update that was happening operationally. But one of the things that they're looking at doing is trying to remove some of the hurdles to become a general level volunteer to make it easier. Basically, what we'll be looking for is a statement of interest in being a general level volunteer. and then going from that to an interview process, and ultimately making it easier for people to obtain those general level positions while maintaining some of the stricter standards for some of the more senior executive and coordinator positions.
Thank you.
Thank you. Phil, does that include your comments as executive director and COO?
No, I haven't even gotten to that part yet.
Okay, you may do so now, please.
Okay. Just a quick update that we were unable to secure the legal feedback on the ONCA subcommittee or committee work, but we do have that meeting scheduled for Friday afternoon to get their feedback on our governance documents and what needs to be done to get us up to spec for the next 3 years. We have started a sector scan with regards to the honoraria committee. Dr. Ian Muller has reached out to quite a few of our peer organizations at institutions like McMaster, Brock, Guelph, etc. So we are in the process of collecting that information. I do have a quick note about the audit. We were unable to get the audit in a timely fashion to be able to have the discussion and hopefully approval of the audited financial statements for the previous fiscal year at today's meeting, but we did receive those draft statements today. So we are able to distribute those to the board at the board's soonest request to be approved at the first meeting back in January. And I have a note here that I can't quite remember what exactly it is, but it's part of the committee that the ad hoc committee that Brandon struck on the governance processes, but that work is largely ongoing. Other than that, the rest of the updates are in print.
Thank you. Director Vale?
Yeah, just a question regarding the audit, and I can't recall off the top of my head, but I believe under the act, like our governing act, for not as a not-for-profit corporation, or our bylaw, I forget off the top of my head, so do forgive me for that. But I believe there's a number of days before our AGM that technically they have to be, the audited financial statements sort of have to be available to our members, which would be, I believe, generally, I think through the website and the agenda packages, sort of how we would fulfill that obligation. But more or less, essentially, they'd have to be approved. So are we going to be, if we're not approving it till January, that first meeting in January, are we going to be at risk of not being in line with that, and thus maybe necessitating like an emergency board meeting, which all of us obviously want to avoid? But I can't remember off the top of my head what the number of days on that is. So I just kind of want to clarify.
Full disclosure, I'm not super familiar with that particular clause, but we are able to kind of present those statements when ready. Doc, do you have any thoughts on that?
The Constitution states the report of the auditor shall be made available during the annual general meeting. So in our bylaws, it's during, which a first meeting back in January would still align with. I would need a few more minutes to check the policy manual.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions for the executive director? All right, maybe while Director Muller does have a look at the policy manual, we can move on to the referendum questions. Chair Dang.
Yeah, sure, I can take it. But before I go on to that, does anyone have questions regarding the quarterly reports that were provided? We have Chris Turner here on. Okay, as there's no questions, I'm more than happy to then go through the each of the referendum questions. So I participate along with other members from the operations side in the non-tuition fee protocol committee, and based on that discussion, as well as drafting up these referendum questions into proper standing or proper wording. Us as a board, we have to go through the process of approving each of the questions. So we can go just a quick read through of the first the first couple of questions, right? One is the author's referendum question, which is asked annually. There's no deviation from that. The next one is the Grand River Transit UPath referendum question. So even though we did as a board approve in the previous meeting to extend the contract for 1 year with the GRT and then have this referendum question in the 2023 annual general meeting. It's prudent on us as an organization to approve a question just in case that those ancillary conversations with the GRT and the city fall through, and we have to bring, and that 1 year agreement that was anticipated does not exist. So as a board, we should, as the saying goes, cover our ducks in a row, or have our ducks in a row, and just and make sure that we have something there as a backup plan. Next, we have the International Student Overcoming War question. So this is a fee that is been on for as long as the student can remember. So the summary of this is that they just simply want to increase the fee to $2 per half credit to a maximum of 8 per term. It's a very simple enough question there. Next, we have the music coach. This one specifically for a question for music students, and it's just to support an annual increase to $66.83 per hour for the music student coach accompanying fee. So that one's going to be very important for the faculty music. Then we have this next one here, which is as we all think is our favorite referendum question that we hope to get past, the Waterloo Student Life Levy referendum question. So the committee, after meeting with this number of committees, decided that to re-ask the question in its current state, except to lower the fees excess, because that may have been potentially one big reason that kind of struck students in a negative light, asking like for something about the original amount was almost close to $9 there. So I think the idea is that for a fee that's lower with a lower assessed dollar amount per half credit, it's a bit more digestible for students, and then we can focus more so on the actual benefits of the project as listed in that question there. And then finally we have here, which is the student support referendum question. So this question here, upon reviewing by the committee, it's recommended that the board not approve this question, namely because the student support mentorship is asking for a $17.50 fee for all students per semester for a number of resources. Now, the reason why it was recommended to the board to not approve this question is because, with the exception of the On Grocery app here, most of these resources are actually provided by the university already. I think some of the things that was noted was that, like, for example, Calm, the mental health app, well, we already have the wellness center. The Active, personal trainer pocket, we have the athletic center. Udemy, Nimbus, and Grammarly Premium, we have the writing center, and we have a lot of supplemental IAs on campus in each respective faculty. These are resources provided for free to students that the university or each respective faculty is paying. So it was recommended that, as I say again, that most of these resources are provided by university already, so it seems a bit redundant to ask students pay even more per semester for these series of additional resources there. And I believe that is it. Ian, just did I miss anything, just to make sure for point of clarification for the rest of the board?
Nope, that was a good summary. We can certainly provide any additional context that's required, but you covered it well.
Yes. Okay. So with that being said, I'll pass it back to the vice chair.
Thank you. Director Vale, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I was going to say, I'll make a motion that we approve the referendum questions as listed in sort of the recommendation. So essentially approving all with the exception of the student support levy, the Grammarly, and that one.
Phil, you had your hand up?
I did, but I see that Chair Dang answered the question. I just wanted to make sure Nicholas's question was acknowledged.
Thank you. So we actually currently have a motion on the table presented by Director Vale. So do we have a seconder for that motion? seconded by Director Shandok. Would you like to speak to your motion? Any discussion on the matter? Director Bothwell?
Just to confirm, we're not including that one question in the motion?
Yes.
Okay, okay.
Director Phillips?
Sorry, would there be an opportunity for discussion at this point on the referendum questions, or are we just waiting right into voting procedures?
No, this is the discussion period.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if I just to clarify, if I wanted to ask a question about one of the referendum questions presented here, this would be a good time to?
Yes.
Okay. So for the student support referendum question here, while I generally agree with the recommendation to not pass this question, I think it is important that we take a look at why students are looking for these types of services if they are already provided. For example, Grammarly Premium says here duplicates Laurie's academic advising and support. However, I'd argue that there are services that Grammarly would offer that the Writing Center might not. So I just wanted to urge the board to take a look at and see why maybe students are looking for these services if they're already provided.
Thank you, Director Phillips. I do want to acknowledge the executive director had his hand up, and I'm not sure if that was in response to something that Director Phillips had said.
Yeah, it was actually. So thank you very much. It's one of the things that we've done as a result of having this question submitted is gone to our student affairs partners and made them aware that the question has been put forward and had the conversation, at least the preliminary conversation, to come up with a better, more strategic and comprehensive communication plan to students. The student in question that presented the argument is a second-year student, and obviously having been last year being their first year, their experience at Laurier is very, very different than what is typically expected. So it is our intention operationally to reach out to that group to get a better understanding of what their needs are, and also work very heavily with our student affairs partners to be a little bit more effective. It's not to say that there isn't an opportunity for something different moving forward. But as of right now, students are already paying for those services. So how do we get them aware that those services exist and engaging with them in a positive way, and potentially advocating to our student affairs and the university partners to kind of expand the resources that those services have so that they can have higher capacity. So that we're at the very beginning stages of those conversations. Literally the first one was yesterday afternoon, but we definitely want to get a better understanding of what the need is and how the university can do a better job filling that need for students.
Okay, thank you.
Director Del Giudice?
Yeah, the executive director sort of explained the second half of my comments, but I just wanted to say that I've personally heard a lot of concerns from students about some institutional backlog, especially with the Writing Center and with the Wellness Center. So I believe that if we are to reject this question, we should have a conversation about potentially making things more open to students and preventing that institutional backlog that seems to be plaguing these institutions.
Thank you, Director Bryant.
Yeah, I just like to echo sort of the sentiment that Director Del Giudice just put out there. I think that that's a greater issue that we do need to address. I think there's reason to understand why the proposed question was included in the referendum question list that we have today. I understand too, with the backlog and also with, again, as we've seen and as Phil has informed us tonight, we do seem to have a backlog, and then also it seems that there's a lack of knowledge generally about a lot of services that I think we need to have an internal discussion upon. We had that conversation, I guess 2 meetings ago as well, about bus services and other such things. But to get back to the point here, I think we also need to maybe address why these services may be required for off-campus students. There's still a significant portion of our population at Laurier that don't actually live within Waterloo, and they don't actually have I guess the feasible means to come in and access those services in person. Of course, they obviously I'd assume would have them online. I didn't use them personally, but I think that that's just a greater conversation. So that was just a comment I wanted to make.
Thank you, Director Bothwell.
So I do share the sentiments of most of the other directors that like I think there is like a lack of education. I also just wanted to like bring up kind of a red flag in the even in the question of like in using Grammarly Premium. I think it goes into the danger of Grammarly like works by suggesting how to rewrite your papers, and the way the writing centers work is like they give you support and they give you advice. And I think if we were to approve of this and implementing Grammarly Premium, we'd get into the realms of people not doing their own work, so to say, like, and kind of like encouraging, like, I don't want to say like encouraging people not to like edit their work, but Grammarly Premium does suggest like sentences for people to fill in, and it almost is like kind of like paying a tutor when you could just go to the writing center to get help. I don't know if that was coming across right, but I just think that it is something that we need to consider as one of the services that might not be the best avenue to explore.
I've never used Grammarly, so I wouldn't know. Director Vale?
Yeah, I just wanted to more or less make sure we know. I think there's a bunch of comments in the questions from in the chat, sorry, from the gallery.
Yes, I was going to acknowledge them after you spoke. So yes, I would like to acknowledge the comments that were made in the gallery. However, I also want to stick to the motion at hand. So we are going to move to a vote now. Director Vale?
I approve.
Director Del Giudice?
I approve.
Director Shandok?
I approve.
Director McCarthy?
I approve.
Director Phillips?
I approve.
Director Bothwell?
I just want to confirm that we're not including that one question.
Yes.
Okay, I approve.
Director May?
I approve.
Director Bryant?
I approve.
Director Symington? Thank you. And Chair Dang.
I approve.
The motion passes with unanimous consent. We will move on to the winter 2022 first meeting date approval. I believe in the agenda it says winter 2021.
Sorry, my apologies. I can take care of that. So unfortunately, I have not been able to get everyone's schedules. Even if we were to get it, there is another fundamental issue where with myself and Director Del Giudice, because we're both TAs and they have not given us what the class schedule is. So just to keep things very simple, I think we'll just let's just have a meeting on the very first day of class, which is on Tuesday, January 4th at 8:30. And let's just approve that as like, you know, the time that based on most everyone else's schedule that I saw seems to work well. And it, oh, yes, and Director Both was also TA there too as well. So, and then we can determine a proper schedule once everyone's classes are also confirmed too by then.
Thank you.
Sure.
Director Vale?
Yeah, I just sort of it falls in line with this, and I think this raises the broader issue of in-person, hybrid, or sort of the direction we want to go as a board from here.
I guess I can answer that. So right now we can state that until we work out the final logistics, that the first meeting of the year will be online via Zoom, just to keep everything consistent, to know it works. And while I work with the operations team to see what is logistically possible, keeping the proper health mandates, that we can then move forward a proper structure in terms of the hybrid in person, and then whoever can't
Director
be.
Vale?
Yeah, I was just kind of, no, I agree. I think that's the prudent approach. I think we just do that. The first meeting, we'll keep it on Zoom and we'll sort of work from there. Given that,
Director-
who knows what the COVID situation is going to be like.
Especially with the news.
Executive Director Champagne?
I just have a quick question with regards to the agenda for that item, for that meeting. Would that be an agenda that would be set before the break, given that that's the first day after the break?
It would have to be. Wait, then that begs a good question in terms of the operations team. Are they? I know that you guys also have are human and require time off.
So the staff are required back in the offices on the 3rd. So
mhm.
that like from a staffing standpoint, that's not what I'm concerned about.
It's the agenda standpoint.
Yep. I just know that the directors have asked
Mhm.
for that ahead of time. So I just being mindful of that. That's all.
Yeah, I think, okay, I'll actually,
My apologies, Director Muller, you wished to speak earlier and I completely forgot.
No, it's okay. It actually kind of matches well with this discussion. So just to quickly reference back the point audited financial statements. So from a bylaw perspective, there's no advanced requirement. The bylaws just state they need to be made available at the time of the AGM. It is in the policy manual in GP 2J6 that requires 21 days of advance notice. So theoretically, if you were to set that meeting now, have that scheduled for the attendance of KPMA, you theoretically could have audited financial statements as of that date, which would match up nicely with could match up nicely with your 21-day notice.
and just to answer a quick question there, apologies for kind of wiggling into the speakers list here. Most of the main items for discussion on that first day would just be other than the audit statement, ownership linkage discussions, and the election, which are materials that do not really require operations, to be honest, to like help this in the. I know that there might be some additional updates, but I think we can get them all set up prior to when everyone leaves on break.
Director Vale?
Yeah, no, I think Chair Dang sort of answered aspects of that. No, and then the other aspect that I guess I would have is, so seeing if we're in, or do we know in fact if the auditors can even attend on the 3rd at 8:30 p.m.
4th.
Or sorry, the 4th. I mean, because I because I think that, and in some respects we may have to kind of work around that too, perhaps for that first meeting. Just a thought.
Executive Director?
So in conversation with both Director Finance and Administration, Chris Turner, and Director of Policy Research and Advocacy, Ian Muller, our stance is that because they missed our deadline, that given a month's notice, they should be fine to be able to meet us on the January 4th meeting if that's what's going to be voted on and approved.
Thank you.
Perfect,
Director
thank
Bryant,
you.
you had your hand up?
Oh, sorry, Ezra, I was just gonna say, I was gonna ask a question, but it's been answered, so.
Thank you. We will now be moving on to the Direct Inspection Committee Final Report, BMD 2A. Director Del Giudice. Sorry, Phil?
Sorry, I may have missed this, but did you guys vote on
We
that
did
January
not.
4th thing?
No, we did not. I can do the honors. Can I get a motion on the table to have the first winter meeting of 2022 to be on January 4th at 8:30 p.m. contingent that it does not, all directors are available that day pending we get finalized schedules.
Sorry, Ian, was that supposed to say he can't motion?
No, I'm saying Andrew, instead of asking, you can just motion because you're not chairing right now.
Okay.
You can move the motion, Andrew.
Yes, I motioned that.
Okay, motion by Director Del Giudice, seconded by Director Phillips. Would you like to speak to your motion? Any discussion on the matter? Thank you, Phil, for clearing that up. We're going to go to a vote. Director Vale?
I approve.
Director Del Giudice?
I approve.
Director Shandog?
I approve.
Director McCarthy?
I approve.
Director Phillips?
I approve.
Director Bothwell?
I approve.
Director May?
I approve.
Director Bryant?
I approve.
Director Symington? Chair Dang?
I approve.
The motion passes with unanimous consent. Now we can go on to Director Del Giudice. For Direct Inspection Committee Final Report, BMD.
Sorry, my Wi-Fi cut out. What are we doing exactly?
Oh, we're at the Direct Inspection Committee final report.
Okay. All right, so should I, I'm going to speak about that, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, my apologies. My Wi-Fi has been in and out today. So myself, Chair Dang, and Director Symington met on November 27th, 2021 to review the policies in BMD 2A. We find that these policies are in compliance with the scope of the board. We find that the wording of the policy is still in operation. And we have a final decision of 0 recommendations for the policy at hand.
Thank you. Any questions for Director Del Giudice? Director Bryant?
Sorry, I don't have a question about that. I was just sorry to say that, Director Giudice, but I'm curious, is there supposed to be, this is just kind of like an order question, should there not be like a statement afterwards for the point in the document itself, the board meeting agenda? Shouldn't it have a statement from Director Giudice afterwards to explain that they passed the motion, or sorry, they passed the, what am I trying to say here, the DIC?
Like there is a, like, I'm assuming, I'm guessing, Director Bryant, that in your copy agenda, the DIC report is not there.
No, it's not.
Okay, because there was an updated agenda that was sent out in a later
Okay.
email, and that has it there. But
Sweet,
to
yeah.
save everyone the time, I can more than happy to share my screen. If everyone can see that, that is the report that was provided by Director Giudice as chair of the BMD 2A DIC.
Perfect. Thank you, Chair Dang. I just was curious because it wasn't in the document that I had opened at the time, so.
No worries, and that is as also on me as that later update came late today at 1 p.m.
Thank you, Chair Dang. Can I get a motion to approve the report from, or sorry, Director Vale?
Yeah, I was just gonna make a motion that we approve the report.
Thank you. Yes, motion by Director Vale, seconded by Director Phillips. Would you like to speak to your motion? Any discussion on the matter? Going to a vote, Director Vale,
I approve.
Director Del Giudice,
Do I have to abstain?
not to my knowledge.
Sorry. Okay, I approve.
Director Shandok,
I approve.
Director McCarthy,
I approve.
Director Phillips,
I approve.
Director Bothwell,
I approve.
Director May,
I approve.
Director Bryant,
I approve.
Director Symington, Chair Dang.
I approve.
The motion passes with unanimous consent. We can now move on to Direct Inspection Committee Final Report GP 2G2. Director Phillips, you have the floor.
Thank you. So the Direct Inspection Committee for Governance Practice 2G2 met on November 28th. We discussed the policy at hand here. The committee consisted of myself, Chair Dang, and Director Bryant. Though note that Director Bryant was absent for work. After having reviewed the policy, we took a look at how it met the scope of the organization and ensured that was captured in the policy. And after such discussion, our committee concluded that no recommendation or no changes be made, or our committee recommended that no changes be made to the policy.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for Director Phillips? As I see none, can I get a motion to approve the, Director Vale, sorry.
I'll make a motion that we approve the report as presented.
Motion by Director Vale, seconded by Director Bryant. Sorry, would you like to speak to your motion? Any discussion on the matter? Going to a vote. Director Vale,
I approve.
Director Del Giudice,
I approve.
Director Shandok,
I approve.
Director McCarthy,
I approve.
Director Phillips,
I approve.
Director Bothwell,
I approve.
Director May,
I approve.
Director Bryant,
I approve.
Director Symington, Chair Dang.
I approve.
The motion passes with unanimous consent. Moving on to January 2022 AGM dates and change discussion.
Okay, so I guess I can take the lead on discussion and then the CRO Carney here can add in. So we had discussion on moving the election. Oh, nice to see you, Carney. We essentially speaking, if you look at the briefing note, based on the discussion, because the CRO was hired so late and we are even if we get the nomination package released by tomorrow, it's still much later and we only have just about a month for the nomination periods. And if we do decide to continue with the process of getting signatures, then that point too as well. So we felt that in order to get a lot of things done on our end, which includes the marketing and the hiring of bureau and the election volunteers, as well as providing adequate information for the annual general meeting, the AGM, then like for all candidates, in addition to just the fact that with the all candidates being happening at the end of the first week of school, we anticipate that a lot of students are not going to be very well in tuned or paying attention to the elections because they're probably going to be preoccupied with being on campus for the first time in a long time for classes. That we thought was prudent to push the beginning of the campaigning period by 1 week, so then that everything just gets shifted and the voting will occur on the first week of February. So I believe that captures kind of the reasons why. Kind of, do you want to add anything else to that, Sarah? Okay. So
No, I think you covered everything perfectly.
okay, so pass it back to Vice Chair then.
So with that being said, it is listed on the agenda package as for discussion, but also a decision required. So Director Vale, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I was just going to add one thing I've been kind of hearing from, members or ownership and just more of a common theme is, folks like they're used to the consistent by the end of January, the election's done. I think, we made a decision. I think if I'm being completely honest, I feel like if we have the agenda package out tomorrow, that's probably earlier than having run in both 2 previous elections, I guess at this point now,
Sorry to
that
interrupt you,
seems a lot.
Director Vale. Do you mean nomination packages?
Yes. Like
You said, okay,
tomorrow.
you said agenda packages. That's why.
Sorry. Yeah.
That's okay.
No, nomination packages, like even if they're out tomorrow on the 2nd, like I think in all honesty, if I can recall, that's probably going to be earlier than the past 2 or 3 years, if I'm not mistaken, or at least. So I think we're still going to be well ahead. And I think, we set these dates. I think we need to stick to them. And I do think that they're realistic, especially seeing as we'll delve into later. I believe we've reduced the signature requirements. And yes, Phil is correct.
So if I get some help here potentially from Chair Dang, just what exactly the motion would be?
The motion would just be to postpone or delay the or pushing back the approved elections calendar by 1 week to commence the voting days on February 1st, 2022.
Actually, I'll make a motion that we receive and file this report for information, and then that will allow discussion.
Okay.
Motion by Director Vale. Seconded by Director Shandok. Would you like to speak to your motion? Now we may have discussion on the matter. Director Del Giudice.
Sorry, can you briefly explain what Director Vale's motion was? I'm a bit
It was just to
confused about that.
receive and file. Basically, in other words, effectively, we're just receiving this information and then we can discuss it. And then if we can take whatever direction we want. In other words, we're not forcing ourselves into a motion now without having discussion beforehand. So we're like, in other words, we can all kind of hear everybody's thoughts and then come to a motion if we decide, because really you're only going to need a motion if we wish to push it a week. Otherwise, that motion is already previously passed for the board. And actually it would be a reconsideration, I believe, as well.
Okay.
In short, I believe we're just having a motion to talk.
Okay,
Yes.
perfect.
Would
that's
you like
my
to second that
question. So
motion?
we're going into discussion. Yes.
Yes. So we're going to go to a vote. Director Vale,
I approve.
Director Del Giudice,
I approve.
Director Shandok,
I approve.
Director McCarthy,
I approve.
Director Phillips,
I approve.
Director Bothwell,
I approve.
Director May,
I approve.
Director Bryant,
I approve.
Director Symington, Chair Dang.
I approve.
The motion passes with unanimous consent. For the sake of time, please raise your hand now if you'd like to speak. Phil?
Yeah,
Phil,
when it's appropriate. I did solicit some feedback from the hiring team, so specifically from the Vice President of Finance and Volunteer Operations on the impact that would be made on the hiring process of vice presidents, associate vice presidents, coordinators, and then general level volunteers. So I do have that feedback ready. I'm just not sure how you want to present it and when it's appropriate to. It doesn't have to be right away, but I just want the board to be aware that that information is available.
thank you. Director Bothwell?
Well, I have comments, but I would like to hear what Phil has to say first, to be honest.
Phil, if you wish to share that information that's been requested.
How would you like me to share it? I have it in, as I've basically taken a big long email, turned it into bullet points. I can read it or I can share my screen or whatever's easiest.
We can have you share screen. Director Bothwell, your hand's still up because you said you'd like to speak after Phil, correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Can everybody see that okay?
Yes.
Yep.
So do you want to just read it quietly or would you like me to go through it?
You can go to.
Yeah, go through it, please.
All right. So basically, everything kind of hinges on the election day. So traditionally, when the president or president-elect is elected, they go right into a hiring practice, which includes reading and reviewing all vice presidential proposals and applications and determining who gets to get to the interview stage, and then ultimately going through the interview stage, and everything kind of cascades like falling dominoes from that point forward. Ultimately, what this does is it just pushes everything back because the timing of this particular semester is a little bit strange, because reading week is after the 7th week of classes, I believe. And we get back and it's essentially the first week of March after reading week. And so there is the potential ultimately for hiring to be pushed back to the point where potential general level hiring is done during the exam period. That being said, operationally, like we'll figure out how to make it work if the board makes that decision. But I just wanted to kind of I wanted to be able to have hiring's perspective put on the record. I'm happy to submit this document or the fully written document to the record so it can be added to the minutes when appropriate. But yeah, ultimately, basically what it all sums up is it just pushes everything back a week, which may sound inconsequential, but with reading week falling when it does, it has the potential to be very detrimental in terms of the timing of hiring coordinators, et cetera, which could make things very, very difficult for the hiring team and the volunteer experience in general. But again, I would like to reiterate, we just wanted to get these opinions on the record as part of the discussion. Whatever the board decides, we will figure out.
Thank you, Executive Director.
And if whenever you want me to stop sharing my screen, just say the word.
Please stop. Dr. Bothwell?
Yeah, thank you, Phil, for sharing that. That was actually like my biggest concern, as I was worried it was going to push hiring back by a week. And also with that in mind, I do think students traditionally know voting to happen in the last week of January. So I am on the strong opinion that we stick with what it is now and we don't proceed moving it back a week, because I do think it will have, like, despite the fact that people don't haven't been on campus for a while. I think it'll have a worse impact on operations if we move it back. And also, we just need to get this done.
Thank you, Victoria. Your hand is down now. Director Bryant?
Yeah, I'm just echoing now the same thing as Director Bothwell. I had the same sort of perspective on, I wanted to hear what Phil had to say first so I could understand exactly what it was. But I agree that I think that it's better to get the election out of the way at the time that it's sort of been prescribed typically, not by pushing it back a week, because hiring and other delays, you never know, especially with the reading week and where it is. I think that it's best if we kind of stick to the current schedule. I think that people will have plenty of time, and with the campaign period, or sorry, the election period being 2.5 weeks, people will have the ability to get that information when they need it, so long as we do our due diligence to get the proper information out to students in reasonable time. So,
Thank you, Director Bryant. Director Del Giudice?
Yeah, so while I completely understand the chairs and the CRO's concerned about not reaching quorum, I believe that there is enough time for once students get back to the first day of class to get on campus and to engage with some of the campaign material, to engage with some canvassers, and to have their nomination packages submitted on time. So yeah, I share the opinion of the previous two directors that we should keep the current schedule, mainly because we don't want to we don't want to risk operational difficulties, and we don't want to put too much of a stress on operations either. I want to make sure that the best hiring practices are done.
Thank you, Director Del Giudice. Director Vale?
Yeah, and just to echo what the previous three directors said, and sort of what I touched on before, and I think they hit the nail on the head. I think from what I hear from folks like on the ground is sort of there's that tradition, like an ownership engagement piece, that by the end of January, like elections are over. And I think if the more you prolong it, the more, and as we've seen with this by-election, I think people just there's a sense of fatigue. And I think, and that was another big aspect too, that the operational side, and because I think that cascading effects, and then also that would translate into the budget too, and in terms of getting budgets approved in the time, like being in order for the next fiscal year to begin in that. But as well, I think that there's also potentially the risk, I mean, hopefully not, but that we don't reach quorum and that we have to extend voting. So if we have to extend voting by even a couple days, then that 1 week delay already is going to be, the impacts could be quite drastic potentially. Hopefully not, but that's just, it's a risk that potentially could arise.
Yes, the effects could be just like my favorite pizza, Domino's. Okay, moving on to the election and referendum policies. Chair Dang?
Okay, so yeah, just on the record, since nothing, I think that the temperature of the board is to not change the dates. I don't think a motion really needs to be performed, right? Since nothing's being changed.
Director Miller, you had your hand up?
Right. Because no motion was actually
we had a motion to discuss the topic. That was motioned by Director Vale.
Yeah, that's it.
Yes, to receive and file.
So that's it. So the board has received this report and filed it, discussed, and think no other actions are needed. So we can move on.
Yes, Chair Dang.
Okay, so sorry.
Director Vale?
Yeah, and one of the critical aspects is, so we only have part of our dates approved. So, and I don't know if that was what Director Muller was getting at, but if you recall, I believe 2, 3, whatever meetings ago was when we set the dates, we sort of set essentially all candidates in that. What we didn't determine was the date of deadline of the packages and those more sort of other dates that we're going to sort of work around. So I guess, should we be establishing those at this meeting then?
Yes, if that's the case, I can inform you of exactly what those dates are right now. So the election nomination package will be due midnight on January 6th, as the current schedule is, and then the complete platforms are due the following day on Friday, January 7th at midnight, and then all candidates meeting at 7 o'clock on the Sunday, of January 6th. And
Just to be clear, when you say the 6th at midnight, are you talking about the night of the 5th?
No. Sorry, the six, like, or 11:59 p.m. on the 6th.
Thank you. Director Vale?
So, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was just gonna clarify as well. I think
11:59,
no, you need 11:59.
Yeah.
Great minds think alike. Is there anything else for discussion on this matter? Now we can move on to the election, or Director Vale?
I believe, do we not need a motion to approve those dates?
Oh, yes, sorry.
Yeah.
So can I get a motion on the table to approve the dates? Motion by Director Vale, seconded by Director Shando. Would you like to speak to your motion? Any discussion on the matter? Moving to a vote, Director Vale,
I approve.
Director Del Giudice,
I approve.
Director Shandok,
I approve.
Director McCarthy,
I approve.
Director Phillips,
I approve.
Director Bothwell. We'll skip Director Bothwell for now. Director May,
I approve.
Director Bryant,
I approve.
Director Symington, Chair Dang.
Approve.
Moving back to Director Bothwell. The motion still passes 10-0-1, or sorry, 9-0-1. Now we can move on to the election and referendum policy approval.
Okay, so I just found out that the most current form of the agenda is not present on the board resources. So I will share my screens just in case if any directors do not have access to this briefing note, although I did send to the email. So this is effectively speaking the recommended changes, and I will be also showing the draft version of the elections policy with all the main changes that are highlighted. Most of the changes that we're presenting are actually just either clarifications or fixing minor spelling mistakes or grammar mistakes that were present in the policy itself. The main changes include the signatures. So we've decided that in a conversation with me and the CRO, decided to reduce the number of signature requirements from 50 signatures for the board directors down to 25, and did this on the basis of the amount of a budget that each candidate were to receive. So we using that type of metric, we've decided to keep the 10 signatures for the Board of Governors and the Senate consistent, as well as the my apologies, the 75 signatures for the president, since their budget will remain as $500. Directorships are 100, and then governors and senate are only, I believe, $30. So we felt that this was a fair way to kind of make it a bit easier for future candidates, as signature packages in the by-elections continue to prove to be a big hurdle for more nominees. If we look here, we want to just clarify the social media policies in regards to, at the end of campaigning, what candidates are able to share online. So we want to make it clear that the only content that can share is they cannot share any other content other than the official Students Union #LaurieVotes marketing content. And we also made explicit that to use the terminology hybrid platforms for the referendum and the elections policy. So all the events that occur for the elections, including the presidential debate and the open forums, are planned to be held in person. But if there is an online candidate, then we'll just simply also use Zoom for them to stream their themselves off there. But I can see that there's questions there, so I'm more than happy to end my verbal updates here and also share the actual draft too, and then give it back to the
So
chair.
before that, it just looked like Director Mueller had something to say in response to something that you had said.
Oh, no, it wasn't a response. I can add my piece at the end.
Thank you so much. We'll have Chair Dang share his screen, and then we'll go to Director Vale.
Yeah, so just explicitly saying that it's going to be a hybrid platform contingent on the university guidelines for in-person activities. 25 signatures. We were also one other state was discussing the type of poster rules that occur in the residence buildings as per the Department of Residence Life. So this point of discussion that the CRO had, that's the other major change. Other than that, everything is quite consistent to in previous years, was that maybe potentially limiting the posters are allowed in the residences to just simply the hashtag Lori votes posters, because if some posters of a particular candidate there gets defaced or removed, the CRO or the CGO has really no jurisdiction or any idea in order to like enforce the same kind of rules that are applied to the rest of campus in more open public spaces there. So we were discussing that, although there is the risk that without individual candidate posters, that could maybe, disinterest some students too as well. So that's just one thing that was, just to bring to the forethought there too as well. Most of these big highlights here were just, these were redacted for the use of the online election, and they've now been unredacted for the purposes of campaigning in person. And effectively speaking, the referendum policies reflect the same changes in the elections policies themselves. Cyril, Carney, I don't know if you're able to add anything else to this. Okay. Oh, I don't think she need. I will now pass it to the chair or vice chair to open up the speakers list for questions.
I will pass it to Director Vale to start the speakers list.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So one a glaring item I know is you mentioned that there's 6 seats in the Senate. I believe the correct number for Waterloo is 5. I believe it was somewhere in the, and then because there's one Brantford one, and then there's the one that will go until next year.
Okay, I have not been updated on that. According to my communications with Anna, it's regardless of campus, but if that's the actual
yeah, I believe the
accurate
correct number, yeah, so there should only be the one. Essentially there's 7 undergraduate, I believe, and of which there's only one Waterloo is not up for election this year.
Yes, so there's only 6 that we made, and
Sorry, I can confirm that that was why I had my hand raised. There are 6 of the 7 are up for election this cycle, 5 from Waterloo, 1 from Brantford. The other Waterloo senator's term is not up until 2023.
Okay, we can amend that. Yeah.
Sorry, I forget where it was. And there was just somewhere in the policy.
Not
just
a
number
problem.
change.
I know exactly where it is.
It's 2.1.4.
right here. We can for sure amend that.
Director Del Giudice.
Yes, I just wanted to speak on the recommendation to remove campaign posters from residences unless it is official SU marketing content. I just want to mention that, as a previous CRO, I understand that residences are a massive way to mobilize the vote and to get the campaign out there. I think it would have significant effects on potentially not meeting quorum if this is done. I think that an alternative could be making an agreement with Residence Life to see if they will be willing to enforce the elections policies. Just want to put that out there.
Director Bothwell.
Yeah, my hand was actually raised for the exact same reason as Director Del Giudice. Sorry, I really butchered your last name there. Yeah, if we don't have posters in residences, like just the Laurier Votes posters, no one's gonna look at. But as soon as they see a picture of someone's face, they're more enticed to actually look at it and figure out what they're voting for. And I do understand the difficulties of being able to enforce it in residences, but removing it completely would be, in my opinion, a poor decision on our part.
Last word to Director Vale.
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair, and I have sort of similar concerns about that, and I like in terms of the sentiments that were raised, about how it could sort of impact like ownership engagement in the election process. Now, my one question would be, and perhaps operational resources might be best equipped to answer this, just seeing as they've been around a lot longer than all of us here, are because I believe it would have been 2 years ago, if I'm not mistaken, where there was an actual on-campus election. And I'm just wondering if somebody could comment on in terms of how it went, like those previous elections with residents, like were there any big issues that were noticed, or were there issues in terms of having to enforce policies, or sort of what was the context of kind of that what happened, just seeing as the last 2 elections really have been without on-campus posters.
Do any of our resources want to speak to that?
Okay, so you basically, let's go back in our calendar in our head for a minute. So the last in-person campaign would have been the one that got us Devin Kelly as president, correct?
Yes.
Which would have been Devin Kelly versus,
Leah Schwarb.
there's a few people, wasn't there?
No,
No.
it was just Devin and Leah.
Zamar's
Zamar was more people.
Yeah, and Leah was a Don and Devin was not. I don't really remember there being much of an issue, to be honest. But I'm also not sure if there were issues that we would have been made aware because of the board. Those complaints would have gone to the appeal committee. So I'm not really sure how to answer that question, honestly.
I'm not aware of any specific issues over the last 4 or 5 years that I've been involved that would directly correspond. There's always general issues with respect to posters around campus, I'm sure both in residence and in common areas. But the issues with those being, torn down or defaced are across campus, not limited to any one particular venue.
Well,
Sorry, Chair Dan, you're unmuted.
sorry, I'm trying to find the raise hand, but I haven't done this in a while in the meeting here.
Yes, Chair Dan.
Okay, I'll just give a little bit of context to where the discussion is, just for the full sake of transparency. Because this is, I think, a pretty big thing, is that I've heard stories, and I want to use them in a very loose sense, because I wasn't present there, and I don't want to start using anecdotes as like hard facts, but that in previous candidates who are related to Department of Residence Life, either were rumors were spread about them in a negative light, or rumors were spread about them in a positive light, either or. So that's where kind of like it stemmed, and we want, and where the CRO, who I believe is not in the call, she is in the call, where we were in discussion that we just want to make everything fair and equitable. But I do very much see the sentiments of the board's concern where this could affect the outreach to ownership and quorum. I don't know if you want to add anything to the discussion so far, Carney.
Yeah, I don't think it was necessarily. I think it was just to avoid any situations that we wouldn't be able to necessarily like monitor as frequently. Like, I understand that it's not exclusive to just like defacing a poster isn't exclusive to just residence buildings, but us not being able to go in there frequently to monitor it, and kind of, I guess, just to avoid any sort of issues happening also between Dons and towards other candidates, it would be best to just keep official Laureate votes marketing campaign in residence buildings.
Director Bothwell.
And I do appreciate your like thoughts of like we can't regulate things. I'm just under the impression that like even the anecdotes of like if people's faces are in Don buildings, Dons will like trash talk them. If someone wants to say bad things about a candidate, they're gonna say it regardless of if their face is on a poster in the building. So I don't really think that's something we need to be concerned of. I think we need to be more concerned of the exposure and of the people walking in and out of the buildings every day and seeing those posters. So I do appreciate everyone's sentiments and thoughts on this, but in like my opinion, I think this is something that we need to keep in the campus buildings or in the residence buildings.
Director Del Giudice.
Yeah, I echo the sentiments of Director Rothwell. In addition, I want to say that there are formal processes in place for an appeal and an investigation just in case some slander goes on. And there are significant negative ramifications if that does happen. So that would dissuade certain candidates from doing it. And I also want to emphasize that, you know, if slander happens, it's going to happen. There's not much we can really do about it. And I don't think this will have a big impact on reducing it. I think it just it just lowers our exposure more so than it protects the integrity of the election.
Director Vale.
You know, I can see both sides to this, and I do agree with in many respects the sentiments of Director Del Giudice and Director Bothwell. And I also understand where a CRO is sort of coming from here. And I guess one question I sort of have, and maybe this is a compromise, is are there opportunities for candidate or like election engagement activities within the Department of Residence, seeing as we're going to have in person? Like I'm just thinking a lot of these, you know, first year students, this might be their first, potentially for a number of first year students first time on campus, like living so this might be a sort of way, like there's going to be opportunities to sort of go into the like a lounge, one of the bigger lounge areas in the residence, or have like a meet and greet, or if there's sort of anything that can be in like that, or that, because again, those can be more controlled. Like I'm just trying to think of ways we can have engagement while really find a middle ground here.
Last word to Director Dang.
Yeah, just as a response to Director Vale's question there, and it's easier if for referendum questions, like for instance, the music one, because according to elections policy, in previous years, campaigning can only be done in a residence building at like a sanctioned residence life event, essentially speaking, right? So it makes sense if there's the music RLC, and then that is where, like, you know, we can, like, you know, the residence education, REAs, I'm sorry, I'm using all these acronyms, will like have this event here. But to do it for all candidates in a general, in like a general sense, like even in previous years, trying to just like at the very beginning of the year to get students to understand what the board is has been extremely fraught with difficulty to just enter in the residence space. And also a final additional topic too, even with things moving in person, I believe that the residence rules still prohibit any external guests entering in the building. So events, unless if it's via Zoom, can't even really occur.
Director Vale.
No, thanks for your comments, Sherdang. And I think that maybe the other question too is seeing, and again, I don't know all the ins and outs of the residence policy. I know yourself, obviously, you'd be quite aware, being a Don, but I presume it would be difficult for somebody like outside, such as the candidate, going and putting up their posters to begin with in a residence building, I would imagine, correct, under the existing protocols in place. Like, in other words, a candidate couldn't just show up and put their poster up, correct?
So under the current way it works, and this is deviating from the policy, but more into what's the boots on the ground reality, is that posters, if we were to go with the original rule, the poster would have to be first approved by the CRO, then it'll have to be approved by the Department of Residence Life, then it'll be sent to the Office of the Department of Residence Life, then it'll be sent to each individual building, and then the person in charge of the billboards, which is another acronym, which will be meaningless to this board, will be responsible for putting everything up. It's just that in the history, right, if let's say, like, elephant in the room, if a person who's a Don's running for election, they have more of a premium access to all that set space, advantageous to other candidates who aren't, right, to ensure that their posters are up or whatnot. That was also another kind of like direction that we were having a discussion there. So I hope that answers that question there.
Director Vale, your hand's up.
Yes, no, that answers the question. Thank you. And I guess with that, I'll make a motion that we, I guess, approve the elections policy as amended tonight through the discussions. I believe the amendment was the Senate number of Senate seats, and I don't know if there's any. I don't believe we had any other amendments.
Motion by Director Vale, seconded by Director Bothwell. Would you like
Not
to speak to your
seconding it.
motion?
Oh, I just wanted to add the amendment that I still believe that posters should be able to put into residence. So I don't know if Director
Well,
Vale
we
echoes.
currently have a motion on the table, so we have to address that first.
Yeah.
After that motion, or if Vale would like to amend his motion, we can go
I'm
from
just
there.
trying to think of a way we can kind of find middle ground here. I understand both sides. Perhaps only one poster per residence building, like somewhere in. Do we even have control over? And again, I don't know the Department of Residence very well, of where like a central spot like that they have to go through this process. They have one poster up in the billboard and that's it. One for a candidate.
I will let Chair Dang address this, and Director Bryan, if you want to put your concerns in the chat, you may.
Yeah, I will say this, and this is where I'm also going to have to defer to the operations staff. Maybe Ian or Phil can speak. Historically, how many posters were allowed in residence buildings, if you have any inkling of it, such an idea?
In the before times, it was generally one poster per community, but that usually was a negotiation between the Department of Housing and the Students' Union. But generally, I believe each candidate would get one poster per community, which.
And for the non-residence life experience people, community means per floor, essentially speaking, right?
Yeah.
So yeah. So if let's say a building has 10 communities, that's 10 posters for that residence building, right?
Correct.
Okay.
I also know that there's been, now this isn't an elections thing, but for events, sometimes residents like to keep the poster clutter down, has a limited number per building so that posters are up in common areas, not necessarily in the floors. So you could have them in the quote unquote lobbies, which is a little bit more of a controlled area. So those numbers would then go from 150 down to however many buildings there are. I can't remember how many buildings there are off the top of my head.
I think perhaps Director Bill, then there is the compromise that you're seeking.
And I guess, and then two thoughts that sort of stem from this before we would even go anywhere is one being, and I just doing due diligence here. Have we even consulted with the Department of Residence on this policy, and whether are they amenable to it, or do we even know if they've been approached on this? If there were to be any posters placed in residence buildings related to the election.
Phil?
So I will answer Brandon's question and then ask my own question. Is that okay? So to answer your question, no, I don't believe anybody's directly communicated with Res Life. I do have a meeting completely unrelated to that with some Res Lifers tomorrow. So happy to ask them for their input. As for my question, in the interest of time, would it be worth striking this as part of the elections policy for now, approving everything else, and creating an ad hoc committee that could, in theory, do a report by the end of next week at the latest, and then have that as an agenda item on the January 4th meeting to have that approved before the all candidates meeting, so that when the all candidates meeting, that policy, that part of the policy is crystal clear.
Sure. Vale, you have your hand up?
Yeah, and actually that's exactly sort of the direction I was kind of going to go. Is I think we strike it for now, and then we know and revisit it then. I think with additional sort of, the committee can kind of do some grunt work, and perhaps even the elections committee could deal with it. So I think I'll move the motion that we adopt the policy, elections and referendums policy as presented with the amendments discussed tonight, with the understanding that the residence life aspect will be dealt with in due course through an ad hoc committee, which can be struck right after this.
Motion by Director Vale, seconded by Director Bryant. Would you like to speak to your motion? Any discussion on the matter? Moving to a vote.
Wait,
Go ahead.
Just one quick question to Ian. Would it be prudent for candidates or for directors who are planning to run the election to abstain from this vote? Or is it, or is the conflict of interest been addressed and we find it suitable for them to just simply vote in approval of the policies here?
I mean, that's something for individual board members to determine.
Yeah, just want to have that point of clarification.
Director Vale,
I approve.
Director Del Giudice,
I abstain.
Director Shandok,
I approve.
Director McCarthy,
I approve.
Director Phillips,
I approve.
Director Bothwell,
I approve.
Director May,
I approve.
Director Bryant,
I approve.
Director Symington, Chair Dang, Chair Dang,
Approved.
the motion passes 8-0 to 2. Moving on to we have a committee election for general meeting and election appeals committee. So Director Vale, you have your hand up.
Yeah, just a thought. I think in the interest of time and just keeping things efficient here, perhaps the ad hoc committee that we're going to strike for the to look at the residence life aspect of the campaigning, perhaps we could essentially just mirror the membership of the general, like GP2, G3, that committee with the ad hoc committee. So effectively they're operating, effectively they're two separate, but they're operating sort of as one. I think just that would make sense, especially, you know, generally people who are going to run or not going to be on these committees. I think that just makes most sense.
I was thinking the same thing, especially looking at what the authority of the general meetings and elections appeals committee is anyway. So
Thank you.
So
we'll open the floor to nominations.
just for reference, the membership will include the CGO, which is myself, which is the committee chair, CRO, who will sit ex officio, and 2 board members, regardless of campus, who are not running for an elected position. So
Director Vale,
I nominate Director Bothwell.
Director Bothwell, do you stand?
Yeah, I do.
Director Del Giudice,
I nominate Director McCarthy.
Director McCarthy, do you stand?
I do.
Do we have any more nominations? Director Vale?
Just a point of clarity regarding the 2 student at large. I'm just wondering about how the process works for that.
I think once nominations go well and that we actually officially kick off, like, yes, elections are going, advertisements will be made to find candidates, and I think it's then they get brought to the board and motioned in. So if only 2 candidates show up, it's just a acclamation.
So can I get a motion, or sir, do we have any more nominations? Director Vale?
Yeah, I was just going to make a motion that we approve the acclamation of Directors Bothwell and, forgive me, was it
McCarthy?
Director McCarthy? Yeah.
Motion by
Do the,
Director Vale, seconded by Director Giudice. Would you like to speak to your motion? Any discussion on the matter, Chair Dang?
Oh, and just for the record, so this is the election for the general meeting and elections appeals committee, which
Yes.
will also include the reference ad hoc recommendation to discuss in further detail the election policy regarding residence life.
Yes. Moving to a vote, Director Vale,
I approve.
Director Del Giudice,
I approve.
Director Shandok,
I approve.
Director McCarthy.
I have to abstain, right?
No.
Oh, I guess I approve.
Director Phillips,
I approve.
Director Bothwell,
I approve.
Director May,
I approve.
Director Bryant,
I approve.
Director Symington, Chair Dang.
I approve.
The motion passes with unanimous consent. Moving on to our in-camera session. Director Vale,
I'll make a motion that the board proceed in camera.
motion by Director Vale, seconded by Director Del Giudice. Would you like to speak to your motion?
And sorry, just a point of clarity for my motion, I'll
Yeah.
add that we include the Andrew's laughing, Director Muller, Executive Director Champagne, and Chief Returning Officer Jalal. Apologize if I'm pronouncing it wrong. And
Motion by-
our board secretary.
Motion by Director Vale, seconded by Director Phillips. Would you like to speak to your motion? Any discussion on the matter? I noticed a hand up from the gallery.
I just have a question. It's unrelated to this, so we can finish this motion, I guess.
Chair Dang, would you like to, shall we complete this motion or should we address?
We can
the-
complete this motion, ask the question, and then after that, officially like stop the recording and move into the in-camera.
Moving to a vote, Director Vale,
I approve.
Director Del Giudice,
I approve.
Director Shandok,
I approve.
Director McCarthy,
I approve.
Director Phillips,
I approve.
Director Bothwell,
I approve.
Director May,
I approve.
Director Bryant, Director Symington, Chair Dang.
I approve.
The motion passes with unanimous consent. We will stop this recording and go in camera after the hand in the gallery is addressed.
Yeah, I just had one question regarding the meeting links. I noticed that the Board of Director Instagram has been removed and taken down, so it was a little bit of a challenge to find the link. I'm just wondering if it's possible to have them available on the Students Union website or elsewhere.
I believe the CRO can answer that question.
Yeah, so we haven't taken down the Instagram. We've just rebranded it to go back to Laurier Votes because elections are coming up. So it is in our bio for the Laurier Votes Instagram page. You can
Okay.
find the links there.
Okay, and just for a point of clarification, then all the, I guess, like Zoom meetings for the meeting, like for the board of directors can only be found on Laurier Votes because, or you're rectifying that. Okay.
Yeah,
problem.
what's supposed to happen also is that although we are rectifying a lot of systems because of some back end issues, but if everything was working properly, you would be able to go either to the board Instagram or to board resources on your Students Union, the board page, and you'll be able to watch the meeting, and then after that, that link gets converted to a meeting recording there. But we are having some technical issues there, so apologies for that, Nicholas.
Okay, no problem. Just wanted to ask that, just figured after not being able to find tonight, but no problem. Thank you so much.
No problem. Have a great night, Nicholas.
You too. Thanks.